The maintenance schedule says to change the coolant at 3 years. My bike's 2 years old and I think I'll change it now. I'll need a container to catch the waste coolant, some silicate-free non-diluted coolant. I thought I'd use red this time, it might make it easier to see the level in the coolant reservoir, and a measuring jug so that I can mix the coolant 1:1 with some distilled water. I need to remove the lower cowling. This is easily done by taking a bolt out from each side and then just pulling the cowling off. Now I'll remove the radiator cap. Need to undo the locking screw first, and then the cap can be taken off. The drain bolt is here at the front of the engine, just behind the exhaust, and it's a 10mm. It's a little bit fiddly to get to. I'm trying not to drop it into my drain pan. Once it's drained, I can put the bolt back in again. Honda say replace the washer. The coolant comes out pretty cleanly, but there's just a few splashes that I need to wipe up. Now I've drained the engine, all that's left is to drain the coolant reservoir. This is only held in by one 10mm bolt, which once taken out you can manoeuvre the container so that you can tip the coolant out. This can be done without removing any of the drain hoses. Don't worry about the oil floating in the coolant. This is my oil change container as well. All done. Now all I have to do is put the 10mm bolt back in, and Bob's my uncle. Now to put the coolant back in. The manual calls for a 1:1 mix of coolant, and as I said, I'm using red this time in the hope that it'll be easier to see in the coolant reservoir. Now I'll put the same amount of distilled water in. I've refilled the reservoir up to the full mark, and yes, it's a little bit easier to see with red. It's supposed to take 1.4 litres in total, but this is just a guide. I need to carefully fill up the radiator and engine until the radiator's full. Okay, it's full, but I haven't used up the total 1.4 litres. It's time to put the cap back on and run the engine for a couple of minutes. A few blips of the throttle just to get things moving along. Let the engine sit for a couple of minutes. Take the cap back off and check the coolant level. It will almost certainly be down a bit. So top it up till it's full again. Now I can replace the cap and put the screw back in, put the cowl back on the bottom, and I'm finished. Here are the coolant replacement instructions from the workshop manual and the coolant specifications as well on the next slide. Another maintenance job done, and the only cost was the coolant. And peace of mind to know that the job was actually done and done right.